Hello and welcome to 60 Minutes. This afternoon, we go all the way back to World War I to have an interview with James Charles Martin, Australia's youngest soldier. Sure. Thank you for having me, Ethan. Thanks for coming, James. So, we know that you were Australia's youngest soldier, but what was your childhood like before the war? Well, I was born on the 3rd of January in 1901 in Sandford-Bell, New South Wales. My parents were called Amelia and Charles Martin, and I had 5 sisters. I attended Tree Road State School from 1910 to 1915, during which time I also received basic military training as a junior cadet under the compulsory training scheme. I finished school early when the war started, and I was eager to join the army and fight for Australia and the Commonwealth. So, what made you want to enlist? I thought it was the right thing to do. After the outbreak of World War I enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 12th of April 1915, against the wishes of my family. My parents finally agreed, however, when I made it clear that I would sign under an assumed name and never write to them if they did not consent. I gave a false date of birth to the recruiting officer, saying that I was 18 when I was actually 14 years and 3 months. My father had earlier tried to enlist, but had been rejected due to old age. I joined the 1st Reinforcements of the 21st Battalion as a private and trained in Broadmeadows and Seymour, which later became Pucka Panyel, in the camps in Victoria, before boarding HMAT Berrima in June 1915 to deploy to Egypt, arriving there in late July. Where were you deployed? Well, I was supposed to go to France, but the Anzacs to Gallipoli needed urgent reinforcements after the failed August offensive. So, because of that, I was sent to Gallipoli on the steamer HMT Southland to have my share of the Turks. When I was on my way, the ship I was on, Southland, was actually torpedoed by German submarines, and I was thrown into the water. I was finally rescued, however, after 4 hours in the cold water, after being picked up by a ship. I rejoined the rest of my battalion at Modos Island, where we were transferred to the transport ship Abbassee on the 7th of September to resume our voyage to Gallipoli. The following morning, just before 2 a.m, my platoon landed at Watson's Pier at Anzac. What was your day-to-day life like? Well, we didn't get much sleep, and when we did get the opportunity, it was very hard to. Life on Gallipoli, it soon became a routine. In the trenches, we observed and sniped at the Turks, and engaged them in bombing drills and warfare. I would describe the trenches as narrow alleys, where we lived completely enclosed, like an alleyway or a street. Our rooms were cut into the trench wall, if we were lucky. Otherwise, we slept on the ground, as close to the wall as possible, so we wouldn't get shot by Turkish snipers. When we were on the front line, we were building up our positions. We carried supplies to and from the beach, and escorted teams of donkeys to and from different places. One of the few good activities available to the Australian troops was a good old swim at the Anzac Cove. It was our only chance to wash, and we did have to ignore the danger of shelling and sniping, but us Anzacs, we swam at Anzac Cove most days, except during the winter. The water was freezing. Did you survive the war?
Unfortunately, I survived the war. I was going well until the 20th of October, when I started to feel quite sick in the trenches. I tried to ignore it, because I didn't want to appear weak in front of my fellow Anzacs. I already knew I was like 14, so that weighed them down too much. But even though I tried to ignore it and push on, it was too much. On the 25th, I was evacuated to the hospital ship Glenelg Castle, suffering from enteritis, which is like diarrhea, vomiting, stomach problems. And because of that, I died of heart failure that evening and was buried at sea. On the right side, my name is recorded on the Lone Pine Memorial at Gallipoli, so that's good.
What was the atmosphere like when you arrived? The atmosphere? Oh, well, it wasn't good at all when I arrived. There had been a large-scale attack a few months earlier, called the August Offensive, like I said earlier. The August Offensive was... it was like the last major attempt made by the Allied forces at Gallipoli to break the stalemate that had persisted since the landings on the 25th of Gallipoli. The attack had involved a series of attacks from the Anzac position to seize high points along the Sandford-Bell range, which dominated the Gallipoli Peninsula. The offensive began with a diversionary attack at Lone Pine on the afternoon of the 6th of August, which actually succeeded in taking a heavily defended Turkish position, but we lost the lives of 2,000 men. The main attacks, directed at Chinook Bear, Hill Q, and Hill 971, followed that night, but although the first two attacks were held for short periods of time, the attacks had failed by the 10th of August. Several smaller diversionary attacks were mounted on the morning of the 7th of August, and all ended in heavy casualties. After this massive defeat, the Allied forces were beginning to lose hope and lose the war in Gallipoli. How would you describe the weather in Gallipoli? Well, the weather in Gallipoli wasn't very good, to say the least. They experienced extremes of weather. It was common for the summer heat to reach 40 degrees. Winds along the Gallipoli Peninsula were strong. As the weather turned, the Anzacs had to endure rain, snow, and the result of that was mud and flooding of trenches. It just really wasn't good. Do you know what happened to your battalion after you died? The 21st Battalion, what did they do? They actually had a very eventful time during World War One. After evacuation from Gallipoli in December 1915, the 21st Battalion arrived in France around March 1916. In April, it was the first Australian battalion to commence active operations on the Western Front. During the Battle of Pozieres, it was engaged mainly on carry duties, but suffered heavy casualties
Of the war during the fighting around Blanket Farm.
Like many Australian battalions, the 21st could barely muster a company after the 1918 offensive. It was ordered to disband and reinforce its sister battalions. In response, my mates mutinied because they refused to be split up. By the end of the 25th of September 1918, the order was withdrawn, and the battalion fought its last battle on the Montebrain on the 5th of October. The following day, it became the last Australian battalion to withdraw active service on the Western Front. The 21st Battalion was then disbanded on the 13th of October 1918. So, what sort of terrible things did you see during the war? I saw many terrible things during the war that I should not have seen. I saw men killed and ripped to pieces by bullets and shrapnel. I saw men lose hope and break down in fear. I regretted during the war at first. We thought it would be an adventure, and that we'd be able to travel for a while before returning home by Christmas. I think the Anzacs had been excited to arrive in Gallipoli around April to fight for our country. This excitement quickly died down within the first few weeks. Because I arrived long after the battle had started, there had been many different things building up in different places. No Man's Land, for example, was full of bodies. Whether they were Allies or Turks, it didn't matter. The trenches were filthy, and the smell was extremely bad. I saw many things that I should not have seen, or couldn't have even imagined, or thought was possible. My worst experiences were killing the Turks. Although it felt good at first, I began to realize that they were just like us. They had families like us, and all they wanted to do was protect their land from us. In your opinion, who won the war? I don't think it's possible to win a war. We didn't win the war. It's more like the other side surrendered. We lost many battles, and thousands, probably millions of men. The only reason we won was because the other side sustained more losses than us and couldn't continue to fight. The total number of military and civilian casualties in World War I was more than 38 million. there were over 18 million deaths and 20 million wounded. The total number of deaths included about 11 million military personnel and about 7 million civilians. Australia lost many men as well. We had a population of fewer than about 7 million civilians. But by the time it was less than 5. 416,809 men had enlisted, of whom 60,000 were killed, and 156,000 were either wounded, gassed, or taken prisoner. In my opinion, nobody won the war.